What's going on, YouTube? I am here to talk to you today about your Amazon reselling business and is it in danger from Amazon itself? So, hope everyone is having an awesome day out there today. This is a live stream. Basically, I come on once every week or so and talk to you guys. So, I'm going to give everyone a few minutes to filter in the chat room and so on, because I just do this at random. I don't really necessarily have a schedule, so it takes people a few moments to even realize I'm live. Make sure if you're in the chat, you can hear me okay, that you can, I'm using a different microphone today, so if you can hear me okay, let me know in the chat. If not, I will change that to one that's a little bit better. It is October. It is the beginning of Q4, which for a lot of people, for most people in this reselling game, is the busiest time of the year. And that brings up a lot of questions about, your sourcing, about what you're doing in your business and so on. But I thought it would be interesting to talk to you guys a little bit today about a subject that I've really been reading a lot about this subject as of late. And this idea that Amazon, which is obviously the biggest e-commerce player out there, is perhaps destroying the very market that it depends on, that being the reselling market for product, that's what it depends on. And there are a lot of people that are in chats. There are a lot of on YouTube videos. There's a lot of people who make YouTube videos. There's a lot of people in groups and so on and forums that talk about Amazon and the effect it's having on the reselling game. I try not to get too caught up in those conversations because, to be perfectly honest, they don't really go very far. Most of the time, people, when they come on to these chats or in a group, they have all these biases and they have these preconceived notions about things. And that's all they end up doing. They just end up regurgitating what they already think. That's fine if they want to do that. People need to do that. They need to vent. But at the same time, that doesn't really teach me anything. I don't really learn anything new, and neither do the people who listen to them. And I know some people need to come on and just, let all those frustrations out. But ultimately, I don't know that that really solves anything. But the bigger question is the state of reselling in general on Amazon. Amazon relies on, I think, about 53% of their products come from third-party sellers, which is a majority, right? So that brings up the interesting question, what effect has Amazon had on all these resellers that are supplying it? Now, a little bit of a full disclosure, I've started a part-time gig with Amazon for the season to help bring in some more capital for my business and so on. And I've been with them for probably a week or so. And that some people are probably going to say to you, well, that makes you biased, Prof. And you're right. It does make me biased. But no one who's listening to me right now doesn't have biases. We all have bias for all kinds of reasons, our experiences and what's going on in our life. So that doesn't necessarily mean you're not accurate just because you're biased. I have had a good experience with them so far. There hasn't been anything that they've said they were going to do that they didn't do. They haven't done anything they didn't say they were going to do. They've treated me fairly. They've, paid me a good wage. They've trained me on how to do the job, and I don't have anything negative to say about them. They're doing exactly what they said they would do, and that's always preferable to working for someone who doesn't do that. But I just want to get that out of the way. But Amazon, like I said, depends on an awful lot of third-party sellers for product. So it begs the question, how do you go about making sure those third-party sellers are supported, encouraged, given ample opportunity to succeed on the platform? But ultimately, Amazon's goal, as we've learned, is to be the most customer-centric company on the earth. And here's how they're doing that. They want a wide variety of products delivered at a great price, at a low price, delivered very quickly to their customers. And they're doing everything they can to facilitate those three things. So if you know those three things, when you start to sell on the platform, you won't be surprised by some of the decisions they make. Now, that doesn't mean that every decision they make is perfect, but they ultimately want a low price for the items that people are offering on the platform. They want a wide variety, and they want to be able to get them to their customers very, very quickly. So they've taken different steps to, facilitate those three goals. And I think that you could argue about, their success and so on, but I don't think anyone can argue they haven't been successful in general. Obviously, they're, one of the largest corporations on earth and absolutely the biggest e-commerce retailer by far. So they've clearly been successful in what they're doing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to find it the right fit for you and what you're doing. And will it be, what makes sense for you? But you got to keep those three things in mind when you start selling on the platform. So what does that look like? Well, if you're a reseller, they're going to want you to offer a wide variety of products. Now, you may only sell one product on the platform, and that's fine. Like, they're looking at the aggregate. That's important to remember about Amazon and any company like this that we sell on. You are an individual and you care an incredible amount about your individual experience with that e-commerce platform, right? But they have to look at you in general as part of a larger group. There's no way that a company as large as Amazon, with as many sellers as they have on the platform and as many customers, there's no way that they can devote tremendous amounts of time and energy to making sure that you, in particular, are completely 100% successful. Because it's just not possible. There's not enough time and energy they have, not enough resources. So instead, what they try to do is they look at all the sellers on the platform as a group and what makes the most sense for that group of sellers, while also committing resources to, those three objectives they have as a company. And I think that's important to remember, because a lot of sellers get on Amazon or eBay or wherever, and they think this e-commerce platform owes me something. They do not. They don't owe you anything. You are one small, tiny cog in their machine. And I don't think there's any other way that it can work. Like, you may be the only cog in your reselling machine. You're a one-man or one-woman show. But in Amazon's platform, you're just one of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So they have to do things that will, in the aggregate, be right for their sellers, but will also be right for their customers on the back end. They are really, really hyper-focused on customers. So you have to remember that when you're dealing with Amazon. It's not personal. Anything that they do or don't do to you or for you is not personal. It affects you personally, but it's not personal. I hate to say this way, but Amazon doesn't care about you personally. They care about sellers as an aggregate. And that's just, there's no other way they can do it. They can't make exceptions for you all the time that they make for everyone else, and vice versa. If they do that, eventually they have a muddled mess. If they do too much, they have a muddled mess in the back end and nobody knows what the heck's going on. So accept that the fact that you are a cog in a bigger machine. You also have to realize that Amazon's a business, just like you're a business. They have to do things that make sense for their bottom line, that make sense for their shareholders, that make sense for their employees, that make sense for their public image. I think Amazon would be the first one to admit they don't always make the best decisions. No company does, but they're doing the best they can to do those things, right? And because they have a business mindset, they have to look at the bottom line. They have to look at what makes sense for their sustained profitability and their sustained viability as a company. That's their financial responsibility to their shareholders and their employees and their customers. So because they have to do that, just like you have to do that as a reseller, they're going to make financial decisions that impact you negatively. No doubt about it. They're going to do things that are going to take your business model and turn it upside down on its head. And all of a sudden, what you were selling today now doesn't make any sense to sell tomorrow. That happens all the time. That is one of my biggest pet peeves in the reselling community. We seem to believe, I say we, but it's not all of us, but some of us believe in the reselling community that once we start selling something that's profitable and that we can find cheaply and we know how to get it into the platform, we seem to believe that we are entitled to that product and that profitability and that model forever. Guess what, gang? You're not. You are not that special. You are not that different than anybody else. And you're not entitled to that. You're not entitled for it to stay the same forever, because it's not going to, because it can't. Other things change that impact your model that eventually trickle through the system to affect you. So if you go into this reselling game on Amazon with this idea that I'm going to sell product X and I'm going to buy it for this amount of money and I'm going to send it this much and it's just going to be that way forever and it's going to be all about me, it's not. It's not all about you, and it will never be all about you. It's all about you in terms of your perception of what's happening to you, but it's not all about you in terms of Amazon's view of you. Again, you're an aggregate. You're a bunch of sellers. They're trying to do the best they can for us as a group of sellers, but that sometimes may mean, not even sometimes, it will sometimes mean they're going to make decisions that impact your business negatively. So I'm going to tell you what I mentioned earlier. Don't take it personal. It's not personal. Amazon doesn't have it out for you. Again, they're not thinking like that. Customers don't have it out for you. The universe doesn't have it out for you. Things just happen. If you're selling a widget and you're buying it for $1 and you're selling it for $20 and you're netting $10 on it and woohoo, life is good, and you're just raking in money hand over fist, and then all of a sudden 50 other people start selling the widget, that is not the universe trying to crush your soul. It's not. That will happen to you. If what you did now no longer works, that's just the way life goes. And it's just the way reselling goes. And it's not Amazon's fault when that happens. It's not Amazon's fault when 50 other people start selling your item. It's not Amazon's fault when what worked for you yesterday doesn't work tomorrow. It's not Amazon's fault when they have to change their fee structure and that negatively impacts your business. They're doing the same thing you're doing. They're doing exactly the same thing you're doing. They're trying to make the best decisions for their business, just like you're trying to make the best decisions for your business. So the difference is they have a huge amount of shareholders in their business, and Amazon's a massive company. And massive companies don't move very quickly usually. It's hard to turn them once they get going in a certain direction. It can take years, if ever. So when change happens, it's usually incremental. And even though it may be incremental, it may affect you massively, any one change, but it's incremental over time because they'll adjust, they'll tinker, they'll do this, and then they'll see how that works. And you do the same thing in your business. You make changes too. Usually you don't completely blow it all up, but you could, because if you're a one-person show, it's so much easier to do that when it's just you. But big, massive corporations like Amazon can't do that very easily. They can't maneuver that quickly. It's very difficult. So don't take it personal. Realize that they're making profitable decisions for their shareholders, not you. And it's not directed at you. And, the other thing I would say is that this sense of entitlement, I don't know if that's the right word, that some people in this reselling community have around what should be good for them. Entitlement's not the right word, but there's a mindset out there that, and it drives me crazy, that people start doing something on Amazon. They start selling something, a product, a certain way, and it's good for them. And it works for them. And they don't want anybody else coming to the game. Like, that's it. Like, I've arrived. I'm now being profitable. It's now working for me. And it's been working for me for months or years or whatever. And nobody else should come in and partake in that because it's all about me. And it really is driven by selfishness, I think, even though people will say, well, it's unfair and these changes came and the market's flooded and blah, blah, blah. When you boil it all down, when you really boil it down, it comes back to, this is all about me. And now this is no longer as good for me as it used to be. And that's not right. So I'm going to kid on here and bitch and moan about it. You know, that's your right to do. But ultimately you don't have any credibility. You don't have any credibility. I mean, everybody out here in this game who's done this has seen changes happen on these platforms. They're changing. They've changed in the past, and they will change in the future. And the best business owners realize that, embrace that, know that it's going to cause headaches. It's going to cause you to go different directions. It's going to cause what worked to no longer work. And you just pivot and turn in a different direction. Somebody made a comment recently on my channel about that, like pivoting and doing different things and so on. And I thought, you know what? That's the only thing I can do. Like when something stops working or it's not working like you thought, what are you supposed to do? You know, like what are you supposed to do? Well, you're supposed to pivot and do something different. Again, that goes back to what's our advantage as resellers. We're small operations. We can pivot quickly. We can go in a different direction if we need to. We can make tweaks very easily. And you should do that when it stops working for you or doesn't work the way you thought it was going to work. And Amazon realizes that too. So they're tweaking, they're pivoting all the time. They're making changes. And you have to be able to adapt to them if you want to sell on the platform. It is that simple. If you ran Amazon or any other platform and you had a structure that all of a sudden was no longer working for you and other people were selling on it, you would change. I mean, you could keep it the same and get less stellar results. That's up to you. But ultimately, you'd probably change. And you'd make a change based on your self-interest, based on this is what I think will be the best for us going forward. And you would make the change. Amazon is doing the exact same thing. They're not doing it to you. They're doing it for their customers. And if you don't want to be part of that, you certainly don't have to be. No one's forcing you to sell on Amazon. No one's forcing you to send products into their fulfillment centers. So you ultimately can take your business elsewhere. And you should diversify your revenue stream because there are businesses that get, that are no longer viable. Which brings me to, I guess, my final point about this is that a lot of people in our community, unfortunately, our reselling community, seem to have this scarcity mindset, this mindset that new sellers come in all the time. They come in at lower prices and supply gets saturated. And it just gets less and less profitable. Part is not profitable. And that's what always happens on every product, every category, every niche. That is just not true. That is not true for lots of reasons. And they're only looking at one piece of it, the piece that's really related to their self-interest. Like, well, I was selling this 5 years ago, and it was me and Fred and Bill over there. It was just the three of us. And now there's 35 other people selling it. And now the prices have dropped 40% from what they were. That may be all true, but there's some other things that happen that you don't realize. The biggest complaint I think a lot of resellers have is that more and more people are selling. They say that without really any proof. Have you ever noticed that? Like, have you ever been on a forum or another chat and somebody said, yeah, it's just so many sellers and they're just flooding the market and all these Chinese imports and this happened and that, but they don't really have any proof. It's just anecdotal. Like they just look at it and they eyeball it. And they say, oh, well, they don't look at quantity or actual number of sellers, or they don't have data to back it up. They just say it because it sounds good. Like, and you know what that kind of is? It's kind of you know what it kind of reminds me of? It reminds me of like a marathon. And I just thought of this example, so maybe it's not going to be the best thought out one. Let's say you decide to go run a marathon, 26 miles, right? And that's a long race. And your objective, you think, is to win the race. And let's say it's only you and one other person who's running in this marathon, and that person is out of shape, overweight, never ran a marathon before. And you beat them, you run the marathon in 4 hours and you beat them. Then the next year, the marathon comes back around and now there's 10 other people competing. And some of these people are faster and you haven't really changed. you run the same speed you ran the year before, and you beat the same person who you beat last year, but 3 of the 10 new people beat you. They run it in 3 hours. In the reselling world, a lot of people would point to those 3 runners and say, you know what? I can't win now. There's just too much competition. This isn't fair. They're coming in. They're running the game. They're running faster than me. And they are running faster than you because they figured some things out you haven't figured out. They've accepted some things you haven't accepted. So rather than spend your time getting faster at running, you complain about the competition. I see that argument all the time in this community, all the time. And to throw in even, and to add on to the analogy, guess what? The e-commerce pie is growing. The number of e-commerce online sales on Amazon and other platforms is growing. The pie is getting bigger. There are more opportunities. In other words, there's more marathons you could go run, or maybe even shorter races you could run that would better suit your style and better suit your fitness level. People want to spend so much time wondering why is what I did last year not working? And trust me, I'm guilty of that just like anybody else. But I reach a point very quickly with most of the stuff where I say, what I was doing is not working anymore. I can do something different. I can do something different. Or I can continue to beat my head against this unprofitable wall and hope that it breaks down one day, but it's not going to, not likely. So the pie can get bigger. You can go run a different race. You can train harder. You can do all these things to improve your selling on Amazon. But a lot of people just want to live in the excuse. They just want to live in the excuse of the race has gotten too hard. There's too much competition. It's cold outside. It's windy outside. It's raining outside, whatever. It's too hot. You can do that if you want to do that. But ultimately, they're just excuses. And ultimately, the people who do win these games, win these marathons, they quit making excuses. They decide to go do something about it. And Amazon is going to reward people who figure out how to run the marathon better. And it is a marathon for the most part. It's not really a sprint. It is a marathon. You're going to run this marathon your entire life. You're going to get to the end of your life and see all these decisions you made, and they all led you to that moment, and good, bad, and otherwise. But if you get so focused on why you're failing in any one moment, you'll never have better moments. And I think that's important for us to remember when you're selling on these platforms. You've got to take a long-term approach, a long-term view of it, or you will find yourself getting caught up in the excuses of, oh my gosh, this marathon suddenly just got so hard. I don't know what to do, so I'll just complain about it on our Facebook group. All right. Again, you're right to do it, but it's not going to change anything. So why even do it? Why go that direction? So I think that if you take all those things kind of into, these are just things they've kind of been on my head and my heart lately. If you take all those things into account, you have to realize that Amazon is not trying to destroy you. They're not trying to hurt they want you to be successful. When you're successful and you sell things on their platform, they make money. They profit. They don't have a vested interest in you failing, but what they do have a vested interest in is getting the most diverse, best group of sellers with the widest variety of products and the best prices they can find to provide their customers a great experience. Amazon's role in this is really the customer experience in the back end, getting the items to them quickly, handling the customer service, right? The wide variety and so on, that's up to us at the best prices. That's up to us as the resellers. That's not up to Amazon, really. They're going to do things to reward that. They're going to reward you with the buy box when you have an item that's at the lowest price of all the offers out there. And the buy box sells a lot more than any other position in the rank of offers. So they're going to do things like that to reward best price. They're going to reward variety. They're going to give you advertising opportunities if you want to improve your sales and so on. But ultimately, Amazon is a delivery platform, right? Delivery and marketing. You are responsible for the sourcing. That's up to you. That's your role in this. And it's not easy. I've made a video talking about how it's hard to sell on Amazon. It is hard. And guess what? It should be hard. I had forgotten to mention this point, but geez, the people who are out there who complain about competition, right? And there's a lot of them out there. I know you guys watching. I know you've all heard these people. I wonder if they would be okay with Amazon offering 0 fees. Guess what, guys? You can come sell on our platform and we'll eat all the cost of marketing it. And when something sells, you get 100% of the profits. That would be easier for you, right? Guess what the competition would do then? It would skyrocket. So if you make it too easy for that, then you run the risk of more and more people jumping on board, and your offer would get lost in a sea of hundreds, if not thousands. I mean, can you imagine if every single listing that you jumped on had 10,000 offers? You talk about a race to the bottom in price. I mean, I don't think these people want it as restrictive I don't think they want it as open as they say they do, because if they did, it would be massive amounts of competition, and it would be impossible to ever get your item sold in that sea of items. It would be so easy so many people could just jump on. It would be ridiculous. You would have this is basic economics. When supply outstrips demand, price tends to drop like dramatically in that offer. If an item was only selling 50 units a month and that's all it's going to sell, but all of a sudden you only have 30 people offering it, but now all of a sudden you have 300 offering it, that price is going to get dropped dramatically because people are going to want to sell their item. So I don't think we want it as, I think we want to keep it somewhat restrictive in terms of the cost to do business on Amazon and the ability. I think we want Amazon to reward innovative, creative, efficient, productive sourcing, because that is what we should be striving to do as resellers. And if they reward that and the other guys are out there and they're not doing that, we're going to have an advantage on them. We're going to have a leg up. I've sold a lot of books on the platform over the last year and a half. So if I can find books for 0 cost, for instance, which you can sometimes, right? Free books. I have an advantage over somebody who's paying $1 a book, and I should have an advantage. I can buy, well, let's use 10 cents as a cost for me. I can buy 10 times as many books as they can if we have equal amounts of starting capital, right? So I'm going to have an advantage. I'm going to be able to offer a wider variety. I'm going to be able to offer my products at a lower price. Again, tying right into what Amazon wants us as sellers to have. And Amazon's going to reward that. And they should reward that, because guess what? I'm a better business person than they are. I should get rewarded by this e-commerce platform for that. I should not get rewarded just because I exist and just because the way I used to do it worked and now it doesn't. And you should go back, Amazon. This isn't fair. So I think for all those reasons, guys, I think it's important to realize that Amazon, and I didn't want this to come off like a rant. I hope it didn't. But I think Amazon is doing the best they can with a massive amount of complexity, massive number of employees, a massive number of customers, and an unbelievable amount of product. And let me say, as somebody on the back end now, I've seen that. Good gracious, it is absurd. They joked about this the first day, that we'd be seeing the Amazon smile in our sleep. I think I am. I've seen so many boxes in the last week. It's been unreal. And they just don't stop coming. They just don't stop coming. So, they're trying to tie all those things together. And I think that if you are a good seller and you want to buy into that philosophy, you can be incredibly successful on Amazon. It won't be easy, and it will constantly change. You should accept that right off the bat, or you're going to be massively disappointed when what you're doing now doesn't work 6 months from now the same way. But if you can embrace all that, you'll have success, and they have, and there's always risk. There's risk of, you could break a rule and get suspended or banned from the platform. Those things happen. There's risk of, going too deep on something or going too deep into a model and the model just not working anymore, and it could put you out of business. So what? Most businesses fail. Most businesses fail, guys. If you're still succeeding, when I was playing poker a lot and for a living at one point, one of the toughest things to beat was the house rake. The rake is taking a percentage out of the pot every single hand that there's a flop. And that rake adds up, and you think, oh, well, it's not that much. It is a lot. Over time, it takes money off the table. In fact, if you sat there at the table and played poker at a 9-handed table, and you all bought in, let's say for $1,000, and you just played, and no new money ever came to the table, nobody added money to the table, eventually the house would have every dollar at that table because the rake would grind down every single stack. That's important to remember. New money always had to keep coming into the game, whether by the current players adding on or someone new coming to the table with more money. So beating the rake was tough in poker. Like, you had to beat that. And of course, you got to beat the other players too. Beating the rake of Amazon is tough. It's tough, and it should be tough for the reasons I laid out before. So if you're able to have a model that works, even to a marginal degree, maybe it's not worth it to you, but even a marginal degree, congratulate yourself because you've done something impressive. Because there's plenty of people who can't even figure out how to sell a profitable item on Amazon, not even one, for all kinds of reasons. Most of them are excuses, but for all kinds of reasons. So be thankful for that and just embrace that. Embrace that there's a barrier to entry that we need on this platform. There's a barrier to continuing to be on the platform, several barriers. Guys, this is just the way it works. When there's too much competition, it destroys us. So there needs to be some barriers to that. And Amazon knows that too. Like, they don't need an infinite number of sellers. They need an infinite amount of variety. They would like that, but they don't need an infinite number of sellers selling the same widget. That doesn't make sense. It doesn't help their customers. It doesn't help anything. So I think for all those reasons, you need to consider that, Jeff Bezos is not out to get you. Neither is Amazon. It's not all about you. And if you can adapt to all the rules on the platform, you can be successful, and it will be hard. It will be difficult, and you should embrace that. So thanks for everybody who's in the chat. If you're watching this video either now or afterwards, hit the like button if you wouldn't mind. It lets me know I'm doing a good job, and it lets YouTube know as well. So David Rubino says, Amazon, the green-eyed monster that eats its own flesh. Yeah, I don't know what you mean by that exactly, David, but I think Amazon is no different than any other company. They're trying to figure it out, right? They're trying to figure out what makes the most sense for their customers and their model, their business. They've got shareholders. They've got a responsibility to them to increase shareholder wealth, just like any business does. And they have responsibility to their customers and a responsibility to their communities and so on. And I think they've taken a lot of positive steps to address a lot of those things. It's not perfect. And by the way, when you have a company as large as Amazon, with as many employees as it has and as much complexity and infrastructure, you're always going to be able to point out things that are wrong, things that should change, things that should be better, that should be different. You are always going to, because there's so many things that happen. Little things, big things, and everything in between. So what is discouraging when you work for a company or you see a company is if they don't take action upon anything. But I don't think you can say that about Amazon. I think Amazon has taken actions to do lots of things. Like, they raised their minimum wage to $15 an hour. That's double the federal minimum wage. Some people are going to argue, well, that's still not enough. Okay, well, maybe it's not. But Amazon doesn't owe you a living wage. Amazon doesn't owe you a job that will support you. They really don't. And by the way, people think that money comes from, a money tree. I know Sue's in the chat, so we'll laugh about that one. But I think people think that money comes from a money tree. It doesn't. When Amazon pays their employees more wages, or they spend more money on this or spend more money on that, it has to come from somewhere. It has to come from somewhere. And it comes out of the revenue of the business, which, by the way, If you pay people more wages over here, that's fine, but you can't innovate and do things over here. Maybe you have to increase fees on sellers a little bit to offset that. Or, if you, or change your tax liability. I mean, there's so many things. If you spend more money on infrastructure over here to make a building safer, fine. Nobody's going to argue against safety, I don't think. But ultimately that money comes from somewhere. Maybe people see higher prices on the platform because now the fees went up a little bit and sellers have to spend more. Or maybe Amazon's advertising opportunities they have for you, they have to raise the rate. I mean, I think people think that corporations are just endless supplies of money. And while you see the big, huge numbers that these corporations, like a business the size of Amazon, bring in, they also have big, huge expenses. And they also have big, huge obligations. And by the way, most businesses are 1 or 2 years away from shutting their doors. I don't care how big they are or how well funded they are. And that's probably on the high end. Some businesses are much less than that. I saw this in the retail world when I worked for Gap. You had 1 or 2 quarters that were bad, and you didn't meet expectations. There's pressure on your CEO to resign. You have a whole year, and all of a sudden, people are starting to talk about bankruptcy. It doesn't take long before it all turns, and businesses don't last forever. So when they make these changes and they start spending massive amounts of money, like doing things like raising their starting wage to $15 an hour, that's a huge obligation for them. Like, people think that's like nothing. Like, oh, they got plenty of money. They might have plenty of money in a objective sense, but they don't have plenty of money in terms of a practicality sense. They also have plenty of expenses, huge expenses. I was just thinking the other day about, we were talking about safety at my center I'm at, and I was just thinking about how much the workman's comp insurance is for a company the size of Amazon. I was like, holy crap. They have, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of employees now. The amount of insurance costs they have for workman's compensation in case someone gets hurt is massive. I mean, it's got to be, you could find the number. It's in their financial statements. But, if they're not encouraging people to be safe and they aren't taking steps to make sure those people can work as safely as they can, those insurance costs, are just enormous. And like, if their rate went up, like say even a point, it would be a huge expense. And just some of the other numbers I've heard while there, and I can't share all of them, but some of the other numbers I've heard while there I just think about like the staggering amount of expense that a company that size has. It is ridiculous. So you have to keep all those things in mind. And Marrakesh asked if I started there. Yeah, I did. I started this week. I will say this about working at Amazon. For any of you out there who are maybe looking to lose weight, this is it. You are going to work. There's no question about that. And I joke about that, but I really have. I've already lost a couple pounds. But there is a tremendous amount of walking with this job. There's a tremendous amount of moving and bending and stretching. You're not doing it like at a super fast pace, but it's steady for your whole shift. And that's been great. Like, I understand why some people probably don't like it, and it's for a reason that's not such a good reason on their, and doesn't look good on them. They don't like it because Amazon expects you to work, and they have enough work for you to work the whole time you're at your shift. What's wrong with that? Like if I'm an employer and I'm hiring someone in my reselling business to do something for me, and I've got 4 hours of work a day for them, and they spend an hour and a half staring at their phone, I'd be upset. I would be very upset. And eventually, if that person would continue to do that, I'd have to let them go. I'm not paying you to look at your phone. I'm not paying you to goof off and talk to a bunch of people. I'm not paying you to socialize. I'm paying you to do this work. This work needs to get done. Here's the hours you've agreed to work. You've agreed to do it for this wage, and here's what I'm expecting you to do. I've explained all this to you. There's been no miscommunication about what the job was going to entail. I will answer any questions. I'll train you. I will help you succeed in any and every way that I can. But you have an obligation to come and do the work. And I think at some companies, well, I know there's companies like this. We see this. Like if you walk out into a retail store, like a big retailer, right? You will see employees on the sales floor doing work, but you'll also see them a lot of times standing around, talking to each other, looking at their phone, doing nothing in particular. That is not what happens at Amazon. So, I mean, I'm not saying nobody's ever done that. I'm sure there have been, but you wouldn't last if you do that. Because there's an expectation, like they have a quota, they have a numbers, they're a very numbers driven company, which if any of you watch this channel for any time, you know that speaks very highly to me because I love numbers. So I'm always curious about the metrics and how you get them and what they are and what they mean. And they're very numbers driven there. So they're always looking at, productivity of their workforce and so on. And I respect that because let's go back, guys. Think about it. If Amazon is charging you more fees as a reseller, let's just say, right? Let's say they're charging you more fees to sell on the platform. Well, part of the reason they're charging more fees is so they can pay people a higher wage at their centers and so on, which most of us are probably okay with paying to some degree, right? Most of us would probably say, well, it's nice that they're providing work for people and they're giving them a decent wage, however you want to define decent wage. But if those people were there and being unproductive, and I'll give you an example, like let's say that, you got this big workforce at a center of, say 100 people, and let's say they're only 50% as effective as this center over here. Those people it's taking them twice as long to get the work done, which means now Amazon has this, they're going to miss things like they're going to miss like commitments to customers. They're going to eat the cost of more returns. They're going to have disgruntled customers on the back end. It costs them money. Well, where do they pass on that cost to? You, the seller, potentially. So you don't want these places to be unproductive either. And I can say that, they put a high premium on making sure that we're taking care of that external customer, that person we never are going to see, but ultimately is going to be, we're touching a box, an item that has their name on it. And at some point, they're going to get that item. And all along the path, we have to respect that there is somebody on the other end of this transaction. Yeah, this is a lot of boxes and yeah, it's a job and blah, blah, blah. But ultimately you're trying to make somebody happy on the back end. And if you don't do that, your business will suffer for it. And as a seller, I look at it like, hey, I'll suffer for it. If the people working in Amazon's centers and so on don't do their jobs right, I suffer as a seller. So, I mean, it's not good for me either. It's not good for the customer. It's not good for anybody. So I respect that they hold people accountable and to a standard. Kendall says, great analogy. Yeah, thanks for that. I thought it was a pretty good analogy about the marathon. Scroll back to about the 20-minute mark if you didn't catch that. I did an analogy about reselling and how it's the marathon aspect of it and how we expect to always win the marathon. And when all of a sudden the conditions change, we don't always adapt very well. Sue says the harder it is to follow the rules, the more less serious sellers will be around. Had trouble writing that. I think Sue might be driving somewhere. So she usually is. Yeah, you're exactly right, Sue. I mean, I don't think you make rules harder just to make them harder. It's not an end into itself, right? You have to have some reason for it. But I think you have to have enough strictness in them that you can expect people to have a high level of professionalism. I mean, Amazon is in a partnership with you and a partnership with me as a seller, right? It's not a one-way street. Now, I know we probably feel like that sometimes because we feel like we're at the mercy of them, but that's not really the way it is. And that's not the way it is with the job analogy I was doing a moment either. you have power in this relationship. You can provide feedback. You can change your business model to adapt to their rules better, or you can leave the platform. No one is forcing you. Again, this goes back to that same mindset we have in the reselling community. Well, I've always done it this way, and now that doesn't work, and now I'm mad, and the universe should change and suit me. No, that is not the way it works. It's never the way it's going to work. That's an entitled perspective that some people have, and it leads you down all the wrong paths. If you truly cannot adapt to the rules on Amazon, or the fee structure doesn't make sense for what you're selling, and you can't figure out what other options you have and so on, for God's sakes, go do something else. Go do something else. No one is forcing you to sell on Amazon or eBay or any of these platforms. No one is forcing you to do it. The universe is not forcing you to do it. We live, if you're here in the United States and lots of other countries as well, but we live in an amazing society where we have so many opportunities, so many different ways to build a better mousetrap. There's no reason to beat your head against a rock over and over and over if Amazon is just not doing it for you, if it's just not working for you. Go do something else. There's so many other things you can do, so many other ways you can build a better mousetrap. And it's not worth the frustration if it's just not going to work for you. There's no shame in saying that Amazon wasn't right for you and selling on the platform. There's no shame at all. And by the way, even if it's not right for you, it's just not right for you right now. It might be sometime in the future. Or something else is going to come along that'll be even better for you. There's no shame in saying that. There is shame in making excuses. There is shame in saying, well, it's just so difficult and it should all change to suit me. There's shame in that. That's not realistic. That's entitlement. So there is some shame in that, and you really shouldn't have that perspective about it. You really should be able to either adapt or move on. Those are really your only two choices, guys. You can give feedback, and some things might change, but again, it's a huge, massive corporation. Thinking that one thing happened, or two things, or three things that made it so much tougher for you, and your feedback to them is going to change those two or three things instantly, that is foolishness. And if you believe that, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. So make a decision. When it changes and it's not so good for you anymore, you either adapt, evolve, or move on from it. Those are really your two best options. You're going to be so much more, and let it go. There's no reason to have this grudge against e-commerce platform. Again, that goes back to, do you really think they're out to get you? And they're not. They're not out to get you. You are not even on. There are people who sell millions of dollars a year on Amazon who have lost their accounts, been suspended, lost their entire businesses, had to lay off people, and so on. They were generating massive fees for Amazon every year. They were valuable sellers. But things happened and they were not able to continue selling on the platform. Rightly or wrongly, it doesn't matter. Amazon can't kowtow to every single seller out there. It's not possible. So if you do have to move on from it, move on from it. Don't stay living there. UK Philemon says, welcome back to the real world of going to work. I know, right? I think other resellers should follow in your footsteps and stop selling courses on YouTube. Well, that's not really a topic for this video completely, UK. But I will say to you that like those two, that's not like a natural, that's kind of a non sequitur. Going back to work doesn't mean you have to stop selling courses on YouTube. You could still do both if you wanted to, or neither. But if your point is that resellers shouldn't sell courses on YouTube, I don't agree with that. I just don't, for lots of reasons. One, it really goes back to, why would you buy a course from someone? Well, let me ask you this. You're in the UK. Why would you go to university? Why would you go to a college here in the United States? Because they've got something that you want to learn and that you think will be beneficial to you. You could learn what they taught you in most cases on your own, but it would be nowhere near as efficient or as effective or comprehensive a lot of times as it is there. Now, how does that relate to a YouTuber selling a course on YouTube about reselling? You're probably accurate when you say that 99% of whatever they have in that course you could get elsewhere. That's almost always true when it comes to our niche and our community. What you're paying for is the packaging and the verification that what they have put in that packaging works and is the best knowledge at the time that they have and the best that they to their ability. Now, not every YouTuber is going to do it that way. Not every YouTuber is going to put only things in their course that works. Sometimes they flat out put things that won't work for various reasons. Maybe just they were naive or they were trying to be fraudulent. But ultimately, you're paying for the packaging. In the history of the world, we have always paid for packaging of information. What is a book? It is the packaging of information. What is streaming of content on Netflix or Amazon? It's the packaging of information. You could go out and put a TV show on in your backyard. It's probably not going to be as good as, The Walking Dead. So, you're paying for that. You pay for people to package information in a way that you like, enjoy, informs you, educates you, whatever it is that you need. So I don't think that it's fair to always say that you should just, these people should never sell courses and so on. You as a buyer, you have to, it's caveat emptor, right? You have to beware of whatever, you need to be aware of on a specific person and specific course. It might not be the best information. They might have put things in there that are just flat out wrong. They might just be trying to hustle a buck and not really care. Those are all possible, but it's also possible that they're putting the best information they do know and as comprehensive as they can make it. Is that not worth something? It's absolutely worth something. It's one of the only things in the world we pay for. We pay for people to come fix our plumbing. We pay for people to fix our cars. We pay for people to fix our internet service. We pay for people to prepare and fix and service food. We do all these things we could do for ourselves for the most part. But we pay people to do it because they've gotten the education, they've packaged their product and service in a way that we think makes sense. Because guess what, gang? You're not good at everything. You don't know everything. You're not an expert at everything. As a matter of fact, you're probably not good at almost anything. You're probably not an expert at almost anything. And neither is anyone else. So ultimately, you have to be able to decide if what someone is packaging and selling you is worth it. And sometimes, you don't know that until you've got it. Sometimes you can look at reviews or ask around. Sometimes you can just you just go with your gut. All those ways are just as valid as any other way. But I think there are plenty of people who put out content from time to time that really makes sense. And there are times they put out content that's not so great. It can even be the same person. It's not like one person only puts out winners or only puts out losers. Not always. So I'm not going to go that far and say that people should never sell a course on YouTube. And by the way, full disclosure, I'm not selling a course on YouTube, so I'm not self-interested here. Wendy says, I'm starting to work at Amazon Merch on October 20th. Hopefully get advancements because of doing good work versus waiting years to advance only due to hierarchy like Union Postal Service. So where are you working at, Wendy? Are you working at a fulfillment center, at a sortation center? I'm not sure exactly what Amazon Merch is in terms of an employee. Amazon does have a cool thing. Some of you may not know. I didn't know this until I started there. If you want to go get trained to work in some other field, Amazon will pay for a chunk, if not all of it. They will actually pay for your training in other fields that have nothing to do with Amazon. The lady who was at one of the first people we encountered in our training, our first initiation, she wanted to be a paralegal, and Amazon paid for her to go take the courses to become a paralegal. Not necessarily work at Amazon, but they're committed to helping people work towards other goals that have nothing even to do with their company, which I think is pretty cool. I think that's really cool, actually. Not too many companies do that. So even if you want to go in a different route, they may be able to help you do that in return for you putting in some work at the company, which is cool. When he says a fulfillment center, yeah, the sortation centers are different from fulfillment centers. Fulfillment centers is actually where product is stored until someone purchases it, and then it starts going in the distribution pipeline to wherever it's going to end up. Sortation centers mainly deal with just the mail, or not the mail. They mainly deal with the packages that are kind of going out in a geographic region around that sortation center. A lot of times through USPS. So you're just dealing with processing the packaging, processing the package. You're not actually putting it in a box, getting it from a location, putting it in a box, taping up, all that good stuff. So I think that, I mean, they're both valid and there's nothing wrong with either one of them. They're both good jobs and just whatever kind of makes sense for you in your situation. But yeah, like I said, if you want to lose some weight, go work for Amazon. You will walk, which is cool because I was actually getting a little sedentary. So, you know, it's been good. I mean, I'm tired every night. I need to rest a little bit and just rejuvenate, but it's been a nice change of pace for sure. We were told we would smell like vinegar. I don't know. Haven't experienced that where I'm at, but maybe that's from some other chemical or something being used in a different place. I think what UK, I'll take another question or two. I think what UK is saying, William says, is that a lot of YouTube resellers are just selling courses that push to Amazon when they aren't really making their main money on Amazon. Well, I'm going to say this, William, if that is your only defining factor, then okay, then don't buy their course. I don't think that's a valid criticism of a course, honestly, because here's why. Let's go to the golf analogy. I love the golf analogy. Let's say you want to learn how to play golf. Well, you could go out and hack around with the ball. You could watch videos on it, which is instruction, right? And you could try to improve. But most people who've learned to play golf at a high level at some point have had some lessons from a private instructor. Now, I'm going to ask you, do you believe that that's a great way to learn how to play golf? Not everyone does, but most tour pros and so on have had private lessons. They've had swing coaches and still have coaches to this day. Guess what? Those coaches don't play on the tour. They don't play on any tour usually. And even if you go to like your club pro at a local country club, for instance, that person is not really making their living playing golf. They're making their living teaching golf. Is that really so different? I mean, if you go to a university or even a public school and you have a math teacher, are they making their living doing math, like working at a cryptography, company or something like that? Probably not. They're instructing people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I don't know why we have this belief that you have to do everything you're doing to a very high level to teach others. Because I'm going to let you know a little secret, guys. Not everyone who does things at a very high level knows how to teach. In fact, quite the opposite. I live here in Charlotte, for instance, and we have the Charlotte Hornets. Our owner is Michael Jordan. You may have heard of him if you're a basketball fan. Arguably the greatest player ever in the history of the NBA. And I think he is. And I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan. I was growing up as well when all those Bulls teams were winning championships. Michael was a tremendous competitor, the toughest competitor I've ever seen, just a stone cold killer on the court, could beat you in so many different ways and made his entire team around him better. He's not such a great owner. His decisions as an owner have been meh at best. The Hornets have been mired in like mediocrity for years now. And he was not a great owner or general manager when he ran the Washington Wizards either. Different skill sets, still basketball, but not the same thing. Not the same thing. I think there are other owners who would be much better than Michael, probably, but he's a good business person, but I don't think he's a great owner in terms of the quality of the product he's put on the court. it's not the same. Like you can't, not everyone who can teach can do, and not to a high level, and not everyone who can do to a high level can teach. It is not the same skill set. There are lots of pros out there in lots of fields who are awesome at what they do, but they can't tell you how they do it. They don't even know themselves. Like they're like, I just do it. This is how I do it. I just do this. This is how I shoot a jump shot. This is how I fix a transmission. This is, they can walk you through steps, but it's not the same. So, I think Sinclair wrote a book about Amazon. It's called The Jungle. Not the same at all. Yeah, The Jungle was it child labor at the turn of last century? I think. I could be, maybe I'm thinking about a different one, or people. Yeah, right. Someone correct me on that. It's been a long time since my literature classes, and I don't really remember that one that great. Yeah, so I mean, and I'll just on a brief aside, I'm going to wrap this up here in a second. A brief aside there, guys. There's been plenty of times that I've thought I shouldn't get on YouTube and talk about reselling because I'm struggling with it, or I'm not doing as well as I thought I would do. This happened, that happened. But I always come back to, there's value in hearing about the struggle, first of all, to other people. And second of all, people have told me, hey, I like the way you explained this, or you explained that. You talked about this, you talked about that. So maybe I'm doing a disservice if I don't come on and talk about those things. Maybe, and to be perfectly honest, and to be there's a little bit of a selfish reason in that it makes me feel better to sort of talk this stuff out and get it out of my system, and you guys are an audience for it, and you provide feedback and engagement. I mean, that's valuable for me as well. I don't proclaim to be an expert on all things reselling. I don't proclaim to be an expert. I'm not really an expert on anything. I think most people who claim themselves to be experts usually are not experts. The people who truly are experts in a field realize that they still have things to learn. And it's a never-ending process. It's always, you do it your entire life. You're always learning. You're always adapting and evolving, and trying to learn how to be better at your craft, whatever it is. But I do think we should share what we've learned. We should share what we've struggled through, what our experience has been, because there's great value in that. There's comfort in it for people to realize, hey, Prof is struggling too. I don't feel so bad about my struggles. That's cool. It's normal. It happens. You're right. So my only caveat about the resellers on YouTube would be, when someone comes on and tells you or gives you the overwhelming impression that they never struggle, that it always goes perfectly, they always achieve, maximum results in everything they do, they give maximum effort all the time, they're always encouraged, that's disingenuous. I do have a problem with that. I don't care what courses you're selling, and I don't expect you to sell a course on selling on Amazon that talks about how hard it is to sell on Amazon all the time. Like, at some point, you got to tell people, hey, you can do this. You got to encourage them a bit. You got to say, there's going to be challenges. You can overcome them. Here's how you do it. But I also think there has to be an honesty check where people don't mislead you to the point where they say everything is so simple and so easy and goes so perfectly for me. Because at some point, you move out of the realm of, from you're encouraging people to you're just bragging about how awesome you are. And if you couple that with, a marketing pitch to sell something to someone that doesn't give them a realistic picture of what to be true, then you're basically lying to them. It's like saying, well, it's always going to be like this, and you're never going to have this problem. You're never going to have this come up, but that those things do come up and those problems do arise. Then I do have a problem with that, because you're lying. You're flat out lying to them. And a lie of omission is a lie too. When you don't give people some context for things. And there's a fine line to walk there. There's a fine line to walk there. You know, if you told everybody it was super, super difficult and they're probably not going to succeed at it, and it's going to be so discouraging and every day is going to suck, I don't know why you would tell them that either. That's not true either. You have to walk a line there. And I think most of the people who sell courses and so on, and I think most of them understand that. And most of them do a pretty good job of that. But obviously there are exceptions. So, you know, buyer beware. Your mileage may vary, all those things. You know, and now announcing my course for 90, just kidding. But in all seriousness though, one quick announcement before we sign off here. I don't know how many of you guys use Be Cool. Be Cool is a repricer that I use to reprice things on Amazon. It reprices books, reprices, you know, retail arbitrage items, whatever you want. I'm going to be hosting a very special video shortly. I'm going to try to do it probably within the next 7 days, and where we will be giving away some Be Cool subscriptions free for 90 days. And so if you guys have ever thought about using a repricer, then this would be a cool one to check out. I like Be Cool. I use it. I've used a couple other different ones so far, and I think Be Cool is superior to them. There are other repricers out there too that are good, but I really do like Be Cool a lot. It's got some other features too besides its repricing. But so stay tuned for that, and you can check out a link to Be Cool will be in my description as well, and you can go check it out and see if it's something you want. But any of you want to sign up for it, I think they offer a free trial period anyway, but this is going to be even longer trial period, I believe. So stay tuned for that. But I want to thank Sue says I need that video. Stay tuned for that. And I just want to say that I enjoyed this stream with you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. Amazon's not out to get you. Figure it out, adapt and evolve, or move on from the platform. That is my final advice from the day. But thanks for joining me, guys. Be sure you like, comment, share, all the stuff down below, swipe, push, whatever. And I'll catch up with you guys soon. Take care, everyone.